Welcome everyone to another episode of Journeys of Faith. And our guest today is Martha Pedone, a woman I've known for a long time. When I was first ordained to the priesthood, Our Lady of the Assumption Parish was my first assignment, and that's where I met Martha and Jim, her husband. So welcome, Martha. Really happy to have you here.
I'm happy to be here.
So Martha, what we've done in this series, as you may know, is we begin, with your childhood, which can often be a very formative time, for our faith relationship with God and the church. So can you tell us about, that aspect of your life, your growing up, your family life, the role prayer and church may have played?
Okay, so I grew up in Tewksbury when it was just cow pastures and schools and pretty much nothing else. I'm one of 9. When we moved there in 1951, I was 1. I'm number 4. So after me, a year and a half later, my parents had a set of twins. Then they started spreading out, and there was a boy, a girl, and a girl. So there were 9 in there, 6 girls and 3 boys.
Wow.
My father had a very hard childhood. He has just 1 brother. My mother was an only child. So they wanted a lot of kids. They were just like, I think for my father it was, well, he was a good Catholic, but I mean it was, I think he was trying to make his life better through his kids, And my mother was a sweetheart, and she was a trooper. She kept on rolling, And church was very important, From the time we were little kids, every Sunday there was no discussion, we went. And then, of course, as we got to be teenagers, some of us were like, because there were all these little kids, and we went to St. William's in Tewksbury, and we took up a whole row, And then kids would say to you in school Monday morning, well, we saw you in the army in church on Sunday, But it just kind of became who we were. We were the Shannons that, showed up and filled up the bench every week, Always a baby in tow or a baby on the way,
That's right.
And, but they weren't overbearing, they were, for the most part. Back in the day when Holy Thursday came and you visited 7 churches, we didn't have 7 churches to visit. We would visit like 3, because by the time my father got home from work, we rolled everybody in the car, and we hit a couple of churches, and that was it,
Right.
But in some ways he was kind of rigid, because I remember when I was in scouting, I was in junior high, and our meeting was on Thursday night, and I just thought they were all going to church, and I was going to go to the meeting. No. He said, what are you doing with that uniform on? You coming to church? I was like, and Girl Scouts was really important to me,
Sure.
But he was in charge, and I had to go change and go sit in a couple of churches. I'd sit for 20 minutes in one, get back in the car, and go to another one. And,
Right.
I didn't understand it at the time, but later I understood what he was trying to inspire us. So.
Great. And were there any special faith moments right in your home? Sometimes there are traditions that develop in family life that are important to us.
Well, it's kind of funny reflecting on it, because my parents were Irish and French, and when I married Jimmy, I started hearing stories about his family. The Italian was so different, because we were really kind of low key, It was like, I don't know how to say it, like it was very strong, and it was very consistent, but it wasn't flashy.
Mm-hmm.
It was nothing, this is what you're supposed to do, and you did it. And holy days, oh my God, holy days. My father worked in Boston, and we had 1 car. So we used to get up like at 5 o'clock, and we must have gone to a 6 a.m. mass that was like 20 minutes to a half hour,
Right.
And then we got back home, and my sisters and brother and I would like hurry up and eat something because you couldn't eat before you went.
Sure.
To grab the bus by 7 o'clock to get to school, you know. So there were a lot of traditions, but there was nothing real flashy or outspoken, you know. For a while, he was on a kick on, you know, Friday nights we'd all have to sit in the living room and say the rosary.
The rosary, right.
Fulgine, I believe,
Right,
you know.
right.
But that didn't last too long because with little people and big people and, you know, it was just...
You're a big family.
it was a bit much, you know. Yeah.
So we move into young adulthood now, which brought, you know, your marriage to Jim and your vocation as a wife and mother and other things that obviously happened during young adulthood into adulthood. How about at that period of your life? Can you say something about your faith during that period?
Well, I always knew I wanted to be married. And I knew that from the time I was a little kid. And even when I was in 2nd grade, because us public school kids needed a little more instruction before First Communion, you know, because we had St. William's School, but, you know, we went to public school. Right. And we had a couple of sessions with a lovely nun. She was awesome. She was really good. And the first week we went, I was like, oh, I think I want to be a nun, you know. Right. She was so sweet. And then we went the next week, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. I can't do that because I can't be a nun and get married. Well, forget that. I'm getting married. So I knew really young that was what I wanted, you know. So I went to Lowell State. I lived at home, and my 2 older sisters and I went there, and we, you know, carpooled back and forth with a million people. And I met Jimmy between my sophomore and junior year. And we got married between my junior and senior year.
How about that? Yeah.
And his 3rd and 4th year of his apprenticeship.
Okay.
So, I was married before I was a senior in college.
My goodness! Wow. Wow.
And but it was a good time because it was nice to just be the 2 of us and to be out of the chaos, you know, into the 2.
Right.
And
that's a big adjustment.
Yes. And my best grades were my senior year. I wonder why, you know. And but when we were getting married, Jimmy was like, you know, okay, you know, and he knew we went to a church wedding, and I said, I want to have a mass. He was like, okay, that's what you want. That's what we'll do. You know, it's like I just always knew there were certain things I always knew. I knew I wanted to be married, and I knew I wanted to have a mass. You know, and all the Vatican II stuff had just started really coming into play, and it was refreshing. It was just wonderful to be able to do that. You know, so then we had Heather, and then we lost 2 children. And I think one of the moments I really felt close to God was I knew I was losing the 2nd baby. And we were at my parents' house, and I had called the doctor, and they said, come to the hospital. And, you know, my father he was a good man. He kissed you goodnight every night and all the rest of it. But he didn't say a lot. And when I was leaving the house that day to go to the hospital, he just gave me the hug that I knew it was the Holy Spirit. I just knew, because he just kept whispering in my ear, you'll be all right, you know. And it was a very devastating time, you know. But, and he was right, I got through it, you know. And then we got pregnant with Jennifer. And I was ready to have her at 7 months, and I made it to 8.
Oh, okay.
But we had already decided, after a lot of prayer and talking to priest friends and the rest of it, that we weren't going to have any more children, because I was totally blown away. And I trusted God, but I said, we will have another child, but we will adopt. Okay. Because, you know, and some people said to me in hindsight, oh, you should have had more children. It's like, everybody's emotional and spiritual stress is different, you know, and it was very, very hard.
And physically, obviously, it had taken its toll on you with the loss of 2 children.
And through the years, you know, there's been repercussions on and on from that. So, but I just will never forget, you know, when my father died, that was the first thing I thought about. How good that hug was, you know. Because, you know, when we were kids growing up, you know, it was like you'd get a report card, you get all A's and B's and 1 C, and all you'd hear about was the C. You didn't hear about anything else. Right. So to see that tender, demonstrative side of him, it was very comforting. Beautiful. And I know it was the Holy Spirit.
That's a beautiful story.
I know,
really,
it was.
Very, very touching.
Yeah.
And, so you become a mother, and obviously that brings with it responsibilities. As we say in the rite of baptism, you know, you promise to, you know, teach your children by word and example the way of the commandments, following Christ, etc. So what was that like for you, becoming a mother, having children under your care, especially with you know, all the responsibilities that you had? What was that like?
It was wonderful and stressful all at the same time, because I knew there were things that I wanted to impart on my kids and let them know they were really special. And, you know, and we did go to church, and, you know, it's kind of funny when you watch the little ones now, because when you see them animated, and, you know, and they're doing this and they're doing it, and that was my kids. They did that, you know. I mean, Jennifer did it once. Because we did marriage encounter, we did Presidio, so we were at a marriage encounter weekend, and some friends were watching Jennifer, and they were about 5, and they said she was so animated, she stood up on the bench, and she was like this, and she fell backwards, and I was like, you know? I mean, I have pictures of my kids, they'll kill me, but out in the yard with robes and stuff, playing church. They were on the picnic bench.
Oh my goodness!
You know, raising the host. They're way ahead of their time, you know. But you know, that you took pictures of us, you know. It's like, but it was a joy to instill the faith in them, you know. And in going to Our Lady School was, you know, another way that happened. And Jimmy and I were always very involved with the school and with the stuff for the kids. And, yeah, it was, you know. And it was a hard time because Jimmy was out of work a lot. The unions in the late 70s, early 80s, there was not a lot of work, and so you kind of gravitated to what you could make right, you know, and doing things for the kids.
But as I remember in my early years at Our Lady's, you and Jimmy really got me interested and involved in marriage preparation.
Yeah, we ran the program for almost 25 years.
And what was that like, and how did that affect or involve your faith, Martha?
You know, we always say in the couples that ran it with us, we always say lots of times we felt like we got more out of it than the couples did, because a lot of them were there not as happy campers, you know. They were there because they had to be there, you know. And it was a really good time because, you know, several of the people that are still in the parish, some of them have passed on, were all part of that team. And those couples got to see real marriage. They got to see life, you know, and how you put your faith in your marriage, in the real world all together, you know. And we used to sit there sometimes and kind of smirk because, you know, you do panels and then you would have group discussions, and, you know, you'd get these couples, they would say, well, we've known each other for 5 years and we know everything about each other. And we go, well, that's good for you because we're still learning, you know. And it was just, it was kind of funny, you know, in some ways, you know, but it was a very rewarding time. It was very humbling to share your faith in your marriage and your struggles and, you know, the good times and the bad times.
I really found, Martha, and I learned that, you know, at Our Lady's with the program that we had, just the sharing of stories that are real, you know, that are in many cases, very down-to-earth, practical, stories of struggle or of how, you learn more about each other and family life itself, how you handle different situations that came your way. There really is no substitute from listening to the witness of people who are living the vocation. And I so appreciated that you and Jim and others really helped me understand that. It's not just about the theology of marriage, which is important.
Yeah, it is.
But, how is all that lived out in a very ordinary way?
And we tried to share not just the struggles, we tried to share the joyful parts of it too, because, you can go through this laughing or crying, and it's easy to get through it laughing. Some days you have to cry, but if you can laugh a little, you're going to survive,
And what other significant, what I would call meaningful moments for you in sharing your faith or struggles of faith that you've had? What in marriage and all the way forward now? What other incidents, events, experiences have you had that have really been they really played a big part in your life?
Well, I would have to say more recently would be holding on to the joy of marriage while dealing with the ill spouse, because Jim does okay, but he's not especially well, and it's very, I have to turn to God every day and remind myself that I'm his wife first and his helper second.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do that, you lose the marriage part, and some days are more of a struggle than others.
Sure.
For him and for me, but I think, if I don't turn to prayer and quiet time every day, I'm not going to get through the rest of it. And, but, even sharing Jennifer's struggle, that's very hard. You have to turn to God with that too,
And you don't stop being a mother when your children are into adulthood.
No.
I mean, that's,
No.
no pause there.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And that's a very, very good point about the relying on prayer. And I love how you discern that it's your Jim's wife first, and then medical assistant, helper, and putting it in that framework, that must have been helpful to you.
It is helpful
when you think that way. Yeah.
Some days it works better than others, but most days it's pretty helpful, it is what it is, and you deal with it, and people say, well, it's not fair to you. It's like, well, life isn't fair.
Life isn't right. It isn't.
And 4 years into dialysis, he's still here, so,
Yeah.
And we'll
that's
keep on
a
going.
real struggle for patients, though,
It
and
is.
those who care for them.
Right, but you gotta look at the person that's the patient too, how hard it is for them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Martha, looking at your story in life, your childhood, that boisterous big family of yours, and then moving into young adulthood and marriage, becoming a mother, losing 2 children along the way, being very much involved in supporting your parish. You and Jim have been big supporters of our parish for so many years, contributing with the marriage preparation program, especially, at least from my point of view. And now, taking care of Jim, who's struggling in his health. Bundling all of that together, why don't you just look into the camera here And what advice would you give people just from what you have experienced, what you've learned about faith in your life?
Well, I think the most important thing to do is to pray, number one, and find a little quiet time every day to spend in prayer. Even if it's just 5 minutes, that's okay. And to always remember that God is always with you. You're not walking the path alone. Even on the days that you feel like you are, you're not. He's always with you. And remember to have a little fun, and because I think God does have a sense of humor, and He wants us to be happy. And even through the struggles, He wants us to be happy.
It's always a good thing when we can smile, right?
Yeah.
Even when it's hard to smile, but yes,
Yeah.
that's very good. Martha, thank you so much. I so appreciate, hearing your story. I've known you for a long time, but it's always good to learn, your take on your journey,
Yeah.
and you and Jim are wonderful gifts to our parish and to me. So thank you so much for sharing. And everyone, thank you for joining us for this episode. And please join us next time for a session in which we interview our parishioners about their journey of faith.